What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, you are watching TWA Motorsports, and today, something you guys have been waiting on a while, we are back on the Trans Am. Look, I've got to pull the intake off this thing. As much as I don't want to do it, I am dreading it. I really am, because I put it on before I put the motor in. I really need to take it off because the map sensor fits like garbage. I'm actually going to change out the intake. What are they? The seals, not the seals, I don't know what I'm thinking. Gaskets, intake gaskets. I use the ones off the WS6 intake, and I've seen some like back and forth on whether I should have done that or not. So I'm gonna take it off. I bought some fast ones. You'd think for $1,200 for an intake, guys, it would come with new gaskets, but it doesn't. So, but look, I gotta do this because, and the main reason I wanna do that before I put this transmission in is because the dipstick tube for the transmission goes right over the top of the intake. And guys, it's just a big hassle trying to move that thing around and wiggle it away from the intake, especially with this bigger intake like the fast. So I think, in my opinion, and we may do some different stuff as far as relocating the map sensor back there. So I don't know, we're just gonna get this thing down and get started on getting the intake removed. Now you can see I've got a lot of this thing assembled, and so this part really isn't the funnest part because, well, I got a lot of it assembled, but I'd rather do it right, not have any issues. So where we're gonna start is I already got the throttle cable off. I'm gonna get the cruise control cable out. I'm gonna go through and open up all my harnesses, get like these little guys, the IAT unhooked, and throttle position sensor, stuff like that. Get that all unhooked. Get the evap line off here. So I got some work to do there. Then of course I got to unplug the injectors, kind of get the harness folded up out of the way. Now that we got the wiring all, the loom and whatnot, you can see that I need to take this out. I used the bolts. I think these bolts came with it. It's been a minute since I put these in, but I'm going to take the fuel rail off all together with it. So I'm going to try to reach back there and unplug the map sensor if I can. If not, you do have a little bit of room to walk it forward, but we need to loosen these bolts. And guys, I like to loosen these. These are not the stock 8mm. I like to loosen these almost in the opposite fashion they tighten. So we're going to go through, kind of work our way from the outside in. Chances are we probably won't be able to get these out in the back, so you're gonna have to tape them up, which is always a fun part of being an F-body owner. But we don't have the cowl in here, so that helps, gives you a little more room. Hey, we got the intake off without breaking the oil pressure sensor. Okay, generally you loop through and hook it with the brake booster line. We didn't do that. That's exciting. But okay, guys, so let me show you what I'm messing with that I don't like and we need to change. So I've got, for some reason, like I said, I've got a ton of complaints on this intake. Okay, the biggest one is that, I think my biggest one is that they put the map sensor in the back, but they don't have any way to fasten it. Okay, so this right here is your stock map sensor because we're just running the stock map. But if I ever boost this thing down the road, I don't want to take the intake off to change out the map sensor. So I've got a couple options. We can fill this up and relocate it to the front. Okay, so I've seen people do that. I don't know how well that works. The 102 actually comes with that provision. For some reason, this one does not. Okay, so the other thing is I've seen people use a barbed fitting. So they thread it, they put a barb fitting in, and then they just relocate it to somewhere like out here, which would also work. So I'm gonna do a little research on that to figure out what I wanna do. And then, like I said, I also wanna change the intake gaskets out. Like I said, I use the LS6 ones, and I just wanna make sure we don't have any sealing issues. Guys, I put those in and they fit okay, but they didn't fit as good as I thought they should have. I was also able to get all the bolts out except these two right here. So you can see those guys. Generally you have to tape those up, but I was actually able to drag them out. I got the intake high enough without the cowl in place to get those out of there. So that's kind of exciting. But let me do some research on that, figure out what I want to do, and we'll go from there. Now I've went back and forth on this a lot. I've seen a lot of people do a lot of different things. This makes me nuts, okay? This whole not wanting to fit in like it's supposed to makes me absolutely crazy. But here's what I've decided. I just licked that, by the way. Won't hurt you. I'm gonna make a bracket that extends this up and holds this sucker down. I went back and forth on adding one of these guys, okay, and relocating it, but ultimately, guys, for now, I think I'm happy with this, but we need it to be stationary. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this size out. I'm gonna pull this out and we're gonna make some sort of spacer and clamp this thing down using this and a spacer. We'll just see what we got. I got some TV mounts here. So these plastic TV spacers, they come with, like, when you mount a TV, got a whole bunch of them because they send you all kinds of different ones. I don't know whether they'll work, but we're gonna open them up and give it a shot, but let me see what size this is. So between my TV spacers and this little bracket I made, see, I bent this. I use my vise over there, and just, this is pretty thin metal. Bent that, and then I kept the bend on this end, give it a little more stability, but we are good. Holes lined up, I drilled a hole in it. So now I just have to go to the store and find a bolt that's long enough to get through the spacer and the intake. I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. I want to show you guys, I'm going to list in the description some Hillman parts. I actually found a sleeve, and I do have a couple washers taking up the gap up top, but I'm going to list this stuff in the description. I've got a washer at the bottom. I've got this steel sleeve. I've got a few washers at the top just to get our spacing correct. I couldn't find an actual spacer that was the size I needed, and I just didn't feel real comfortable about that plastic back there with all that heat. I thought a steel one would be better. And then of course I got this is actually 65 millimeters long. Not quite as long, there's not as much overhang as the factory, but this will work. Look how solid that thing is. It is not going anywhere. I mean, you can move this if you force it, but I don't think we're gonna have any leaking problems, and I don't have to worry about it pushing out. So the downside is if I ever do boost down the road, guys, and we go to a 3-bar map sensor, we're gonna take this thing back off, get to the back of the intake and do that. You know, that's the plus side of having it up front or relocated, I guess. But now all we need to do is I'm gonna go ahead and flip this thing over. We're gonna get the new gaskets in it, and we're gonna set this thing back on the car. Now, this is probably overkill, but I just don't wanna have any issues. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a pick. We're gonna pull that out. We're gonna put the ones that are meant for this in here. Like I said, guys, I don't necessarily know that we have to, but I just got to thinking about it, and I would sure hate to have an issue with it not working or it leaking because I cheaped out and didn't buy the OG originals. However, look at that. I feel like they fit pretty good. Okay, yeah, they fit pretty nice, but you notice that this one has this little ear that corresponds with the this. I don't necessarily know that they wouldn't have worked, to be honest with you, but we're gonna replace them. I've got them, so we just got to go through and do what, 8 of them, and then I'm hoping to set the car down, get the intake on, and continue our progress. It's been a long time coming with this car. Want to get some stuff accomplished here. Got the Trans Am down now that we've replaced those, and I don't have this secured because, well, you'll see in a later video why, but anyway, let's get our towel out of the way that was protecting everything. I'm gonna probably wipe this down once with some brake clean just to make sure that we don't have any issues. And then, guys, we're ready to set this thing in place. Now remember, we have the additional bolts, or the bolts that have to go in from the back. You might put some tape around those to lift them up a little bit because they don't want to clear as you're going back in there. You don't have enough room. Now with the cowl off, we do have some room, but not as much as you might think. So put the back 4 bolts into the intake before you go into place. You got it locked in place. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start some of my bolts, make sure that we don't have any issues there. They seem to be threading in and grabbing, which is good. And we don't have any rocking on the intake. I'm gonna make sure of that, because if you do, that means you've got a wire underneath it. And believe me, you don't wanna find that out later. I mean, look, you can take the intake back off, but I put those 4 bolts in, and actually guys, these aftermarket bolts seem to stay and I don't have to tape them up. Let's get the other ones in. Now I started this by hand, but you can see, try to show you, hopefully there's not a lot of glare on my phone, but 1 passenger side middle, 2's opposite, 3 right behind that, 4 the front passenger side, and so on. Hopefully you guys can get a focus on that. And we're doing 44 inch-pounds and then 89 inch-pounds. But what I'm doing is I snug them down by hand in that same sequence. And now I'm gonna go through 44 inch-pounds, then 89 inch-pounds. One broken back later, we are locked in. So now all I need to do is I'm gonna go through and plug in all my injectors. I'm not gonna show you guys that, put them back in their loom. I'm gonna plug in or get the throttle cable back to where it goes, the cruise control cable, and then I've got to stab in my trans tube. I don't know, it may be easier actually to go in from the bottom with that guy, now that I think about it. Because of that big section that like clamps it to the transmission. For some reason I think we may be better off going that route. I think I'm right there. Okay, we're gonna look at that, but either way, let's get this stuff plugged back in. Everything, all the wires are plugged back in the back. We did that when we went on with the intake. The brake booster hose, I need to plug it in. So we're getting there. Now that we got all that hooked up, you can see I had Cohen come help me put the dipstick tube in. Guys, that is a fight. It's a little easier to do without the actual fluid fill check. So the actual dipstick itself, if you take that out, life's a little easier on you. So do that, but then thread it up from the bottom, okay? You're not, I don't know, you might be able to get it through from the top, but I don't know how. Anyway, we got it into place, and it's kind of falling down, so it's not gonna look like that, but you do need that in first. So I've got the hood set down, we're gonna lift this thing up, and we are going together with the trans at this point. Now, before we put this bad boy in, I forgot that while I was up there, by the way. We'll do that later, evap. We need to get the converter in. So, like I said, they broke the converter in, Finish Line did, when they put this whole thing together, which is nice. But we need to get this thing out and pushed into place. Good news is I don't have to fill it with any fluid because it's already had fluid in it. So let's put this sucker on here. Ooh, that changes things a little on the transmission jack. Okay, there it is, 3 clicks. I like to go back and forth. And then guys, when you're going up into place, which I'm not gonna be able to show you a ton of, a couple things you need to make sure of. One, you're not smashing this, okay? This is far enough back where it's not causing any issues. The next thing is, gotta have our dipstick tube going in at the same time this sucker goes into place. That's why we had to put it in. But before we do that, I need to take these fittings off because we are not gonna be running the standard fitting. We're actually gonna be running an AN line. And I wanna go ahead and put the AN line on. Easier to do here. I can cinch down the line that we're gonna hook to it, but I can't, well, I probably could, but it'd be a pain to try to put the line in once it was up in the car. So let's go grab those, get those in next. Now I'm gonna keep these old ones, but they're just 3/4. And guys, I don't think these things go in like crazy tight. I notice he has some pipe thread on them though. It's interesting. We may put a little pipe dope on ours as well. So I'm gonna keep these in case we ever need them. It's always good to keep stuff around. Now our new pieces, like I said, are AN fittings, and this is what he recommended to me. Put a little on that as far as pipe dope. Ooh. Now unlike the 4L80, these are not specific. Like the 4L80 has a long and a short. This doesn't have that. So we're gonna go ahead and get them in here, and I'm gonna see if I can find a torque spec on this, but I don't know, guys. You may just get them snug, and if they leak, tighten them up a little more, I guess. I don't really know, because those other ones were not that tight. And I need an AN wrench, or I think I got an aluminum wrench so we don't like nick these all up and make them look terrible. I cannot find a torque spec that I think's reliable. I'm sure that Chuck would probably tell me, but you know, he's busy. It's the weekend. I'm gonna snug them up. I don't want to crack the case. I don't want to crack the fitting. So I'm gonna do it about as snug as the ones that were in it. And if we have a leak, we can always tighten it up. But now we have a nice AN fitting there. The next thing I'm gonna do is he sent a new grommet for our pickup, or our dipstick tube. I'm gonna pull this guy out. Probably have to have a pair of pliers. Cut this and put this one in. We're ready to get this guy in place. I'm gonna roll it under the car. Make sure everything's out of the way, but let's give it a shot. Now you can see, man, this light is really directional. I've got all the wiring kind of drooped over my header over here. I've got the dipstick tube in there, nothing in the way. Got the transmission ready to jack up in there. So like I said, guys, you're gonna have to aim the dipstick tube as we're going in. And other than that, it's pretty easy. Get it up on the dowels here. There's a dowel on the right, the left. I don't think we're gonna have any issues, but oh, I need to put my vent tube on. I could probably reach that after the fact. We'll probably do that after. That's what that guy is. You don't necessarily have to have one, but I've got one over there for it. Let's get this thing up in there. At about this point, which you can see how far I am up in there, I started the dipstick tube. So it's en route to where it needs to go there. We're gonna continue. I've got all my bolts setting right here on the edge of the jack, or the lift. We're just gonna keep going until we get to the dowels. With a long extension and a swivel, I'm using a swivel on a 1/4 inch drive, 13 millimeter. I've got all the bolts in. So at this point, I've already got the chain off. I'm gonna let the pressure off my jack, and it's gonna rock a little bit. That's fine. But we need to get everything bolted down. I've got it snugged down pretty snug, but we need to go back and torque these all to 37 foot-pounds, and then we can move on. Now, chances are we're gonna have to take this back down, but I did get the electronics hooked up, which is just one plug here, one plug here. And I just want to get the pressure off the motor mounts with all this weight. But I've got a new trans mount that's gonna go here. No, we are not using the torque arm. We'll be taking that out later. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get these in. I'll try to find a torque spec for you so I can get my cross member in place. I'm reading 18 foot-pounds, so that's what I put it down to. It's very close there, by the way. But now I can grab my transmission mount, or the cross member I mean, and get it up into place. And like I said, we'll probably have to let it down at some point. I'm just trying to relieve the pressure off this for now. And then this is supposed to clip to the torque arm, but the torque arm's not gonna be there anymore, so we'll clip it to the new torque arm when we get it. But we're getting to the point where I can get the jack and everything out from under. I'm gonna use the transmission jack to lift it up while we get the cross member in place. We now have it all bolted up into place. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set it back down because I don't have the dipstick lined up. I'm not even sure I can get my hand up in there now to get the dipstick tube bolted to the head. We're gonna give it a shot anyway.